We are back at Atlanta International Raceway, and the reason for this extremely long yellow flag is a clarification necessary in the scoring. We have been telling you all along that Tim Richmond is the leader under the yellow because he appears at the front of the formation, but in fact, Tim Richmond, the man behind him, Benny Parsons, and Cale Yarborough, the apparent third-place car, dropped a lap because they pitted earlier, so they should be at the tail end of this formation and not at the beginning of it. The leader, in effect, is the man in the fourth car in formation there, number 33, Harry Gant. Now, for more on this, we're going to go down to Tim Brandt, who I believe is in Tim Richmond's pit. Tim?
That is correct, Jim. I am down here with Harry Hyde, who has been talking to this NASCAR official here for the last 10 minutes. What they're doing is they're going over every lap of the race, trying to find out where Tim Richmond was. They say they pitted too early. They came in before the car actually went out. The yellow car, the yellow flag went out. They said Tim Richmond came in. What Harry Hyde is saying is that they came in the same time. They outraced number 9 coming back out. They were the leader going in. They said they should be the leader coming out. They should not be penalized a lap. But while this confusion takes place and while NASCAR tries to work out who in fact is the official, and we are trying to find out word right now, NASCAR official is getting some word from upstairs. Harry Hyde, of course, anxiously waiting. He said he's never seen this in NASCAR racing.
They went around the pace car.
Which car, Harry?
You pitted too quick, Harry. You lost the lap.
Well,
you took it in. That's what
the only thing I want them to tell me is how the hell did I can't have my position like 9 has got it now? They can't just pick us out of a car, just pick us up in the pace car without somebody else being in it. How the hell they just picked us out?
I don't know. He said you pitted too quick on the racetrack.
Well,
it is.
The pace car was out there, and them guys went around the pace car, and we did. We tried to play it fair.
He said you don't have to go with that. He wasn't going to change it. He talked to you after the race.
He won't see me after the goddamn race. You tell him that.
Well, obviously you can tell Harry Hyde is upset, Jim Lampley. He is very, very confused. Let me try to get Harry down here. Harry, of course, trying to get Tim Richmond, trying to update him on the situation.
Huh? That ain't right. Well, I know it ain't, Harry, but
Harry, what did they tell you? What did they tell you?
I don't know. I don't know.
Obviously, he's upset. Obviously, he says he doesn't agree with what NASCAR officials have said. He said he was the leader coming in. He did not pit too early, and he should be the leader going out. What NASCAR is saying, and it is going to be definitive, I understand here shortly, is that Tim Richmond will, in fact, be penalized a lap. Jim?
Thank you, Tim, and this raises a rather ticklish question, I think, Sam Posey. In this system, which allows cars to bunch up under the yellow and where many drivers will seek an advantage where they see an opportunity to gain one, is it too difficult or too ambiguous, the officiating of these races, Sam Posey?
The errors are made as we see the green being taken and Richmond go on his way now. It seems to me that perhaps 1 or 2 of the 29 races that are held each year may be affected in some way by a scoring mix-up. And we'll never know whether you could call it a scoring error or a scoring dispute. By and large, they do an excellent job. The shorter the track, the tougher it is. The yellow goes out, the pace car goes out, cars are all over the place. And I think until some kind of electronic scoring is instituted, which they are reasonably reluctant to do because of the expense and possible big problems that you can have with that, this system may be the best that you can have. But all the officials say at the end of a race to those who seem to lose out is, hey, maybe the cards will come up a little bit different the next time.
When you saw Harry Hyde in Tim Richmond's pit, certainly they are the crew which believes it has been most penalized by the scoring decision here. And there's the immediate beneficiary. 46-year-old Harry Gant in car number 3 is, for the moment, the leader in the Atlanta 500. We are now timing 1 full lap for Harry Gant. The race speed had been relatively high because of a relatively clean first 100 miles here. But now, as a result of that long yellow flag, the average speed is going to be brought down considerably. 1 year ago, in winning this race, Bill Elliott averaged just over 140 miles per hour for the 500-mile distance. 33.6.
But the interesting thing about that lap speed is that it is faster than Dale Earnhardt's speed of 34.1, which was in the mid-160s that we saw earlier in the race before there were any green flags at all. So, in fact, Harry Gant is moving extremely quickly right now.
Close to 164 miles per hour was the average speed on that lap for Harry Gant.
All right, now you see Dale Earnhardt right behind him, and we see somebody we haven't looked at all day. Richard Petty has moved his way up to 5th. And we speak, of course, of drivers who are legends, and also we speak of drivers who are, like Tim Richmond, driving injured. Richard Petty had a bad accident at Daytona just a month ago, separated his shoulder. He's back. He seems to be all right, and it is terrific to see him in 5th.
And it's interesting that the King would suddenly emerge into 5th place after that long yellow flag and the dispute in scoring. Certainly, I'm not suggesting that he cuts corners, but if there's any man who knows the intricacies of officiating and scoring in NASCAR races and how to gain an advantage therefrom, it is Richard Petty, who for the moment has pulled into 5th place. There are the 1st, 2nd, 3rd place drivers on your screen. Harry Gant, at the left of the screen, is the man in 1st place. Morgan Shepherd trying to get to the inside of the track to move into 2nd place. Outside of him, Dale Earnhardt stepping on the gas and pulling just a little bit ahead. And we'll be able to watch now to see if Earnhardt's car is handling as advantageously as it seemed to be early in the race when he was able to pull away from the 2nd place car while leading after having the pole position at the start.
Well, we're not going to have to wait for the answer. It isn't handling as well, because earlier, remember, Morgan Shepherd, who was running 2nd, fell steadily back as Dale Earnhardt just pulled away. So it may be, and we talk so much about how these cars change from pit stop to pit stop, depending on the set of tires they have on board, depending on the way their chassis is set. It just may be that at this point, Dale Earnhardt's chassis is not quite the commanding chassis that it was in the early part of the game. On the other hand, it could be he's playing a little bit of a waiting game, anxious to conserve fuel. We see Bill Elliott starting to stalk the 3 leaders. Elliott now in 4th on the right of your screen. There are a number of people, and I'm surprised, Jim, at this deep point in the race at, well over 100 miles, at how many cars are in contention to win this race. What do you think of that? Usually,
well, I think you
3
should
or 4.
point out one statistic which has not yet emerged in this telecast, though certainly we expected it to be in earlier. You go back to last year and look at the last 9 stock car races on this circuit. There have been 9 different winners. I don't know if there's ever been any brief period of time in the history of the sport when things have been quite so wide open.
And, considered, here you see the standings now with Dale.
Oh, those are the winners of the last 9 races. 9 races, 9 different winners going back to last year.
And, it becomes a statistical issue. How do you add to that list without repeating one of the people on that list? How do you get a 10th guy? I mean, it's really tough. You're looking there at the 9 winners in roughly 2/3 of the people in NASCAR that can win one of these events.
Well, I can tell you two names that don't appear on the list. One is a very angry Tim Richmond at this moment, and the other is Richard Petty, who has not won a race since July 4, 1984, when he won the 200th race of his long and illustrious career. There is Earnhardt, still holding off Morgan Shepherd, though certainly, as you have pointed out, he does not have the capacity to pull away from Shepherd as easily as he did in the early going.
Leaders coming out of turn 2, setting out down this extremely short back stretch. Speeds here, 170, 180 there, and then onto the brakes, then roll back into the throttle. It looks so smooth and deceptively simple, doesn't it, from the outside, and yet inside, as we've seen from our race cams, it's anything but easy.
Now, most of Thursday and Friday, it rained here, turning the track and the surrounding area, or the infield, I should say, and the area surrounding the outside of the track into a mud bowl. Then the skies cleared yesterday, and we apparently had advantageous weather coming into today's proceedings. But shortly before the race, officials began to worry about the prospect of rain, and I now must point out that a very large dark cloud has emerged to cover the entire track. There is not a glimmer of sunlight to be seen. So for the moment, about a third of the way through the Atlanta 500, these drivers may be waging a battle against time and impending rain. There's a look at the cloud cover, which has suddenly emerged over this course. Crowd of the customary 70,000 or so stock car racing enthusiasts gathered here for this big race. They have come from all over the Southeast. You can see license plates just as numerous from Florida and Alabama and North Carolina and Tennessee as those from Georgia. And right now, they are watching Harry Gant in third place, Bill Elliott in fourth place, in first place, Dale Earnhardt, behind him, Morgan Shepherd. For the Atlanta 500, and this ABC Sports exclusive is being brought to you by Goodyear. You either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them. By Radio Shack, the computer experts. And by Denorex Shampoo, help stop dandruff itch with an extra relief medicine, Denorex. We are just beyond 1/3 of the way into this 500-mile race. There are the standings as of the moment. Earnhardt, Shepherd, Gant, Bill Elliott in fourth place, Richard Petty lurking in fifth. Darrell Waltrip has moved up into sixth place. Terry Labonte, who won the most recent race on the circuit and won the pole there at Rockingham, North Carolina 2 weeks ago, has now also moved up among the contenders. There is a good look at Dale Earnhardt. You also can feel, I think, the cloudy skies and the sense of impending rain which has suddenly gripped this area. And Sam Posey, what is the issue involving rain, and is it any incentive to Earnhardt to try to stay there on the lead?
Well, of course, what happens when the rains come is that these cars are running on tires that are slick. They just cannot run even on a substantially damp track on the tires that they have. So this cloud can become a very real strategic issue. A race is an official race if it goes half distance. So obviously we're close enough to half distance that I think they could go from here to their next pit stops. I mean, without having to make a pit stop and still stretch it to half distance. So in a sense, we're looking at a race right now, which the drivers, the lead drivers, may very well regard as being a race to the moment that it rains, rather than 1/3 of the way through a 500-mile race. So if you wanted to hang back, if you wanted to change your chassis and wait for another pit stop, you may have to say to yourself, it's too late. I don't have that luxury. There's too strong a possibility of rain. Now, of course, it can rain, dampen the track, will go to yellow, they'll dry the track off, and the race will resume. That's another possibility. But if it's a real cloudburst, the race could end quite quickly.
The key lap to remember, the halfway mark, is lap 164. We're still more than 40 laps short of that point, as we are on lap 117 of 328. So there are 47 laps still to go to the halfway point in the race. And now, as you continue to look at the leader, Dale Earnhardt, let's go down to Al Trautwig in the pits.
All right, Jim, I'm with Travis Carter, the crew chief for the Harry Gant car. Travis, you have the lead, and then suddenly Dale Earnhardt and Morgan Shepherd blew by your car. Does your car have the strength to keep up with the leader?
Well, I think, you know, at this point in the race, we're still going to have to make a couple of adjustments. Everything was pretty good when the race started. The car was a little bit tight, seemed to work real well, but right now, with the last tires we put on, the car's pushing the front end a little too much. That's a problem for him now. We'll have to adjust the tire stagger a little bit and hopefully work that out. If we can get it back to about a neutral condition, we'll be in real good shape.
All right, plenty of time to make a move. Let's go up pit road to Tim Brandt. Tim? Okay, Al, I am standing in the winner's circle where Tim Richmond would like to be at the end of this day. But however, that controversy at the last yellow took their people up in here to the official score. Now, ironically, by NASCAR written rule, only the driver can protest or plead a case or get the official scoring. Harry Hyde was trying to do that. He did not get what he wanted. Instead, Tim Richmond was penalized. So Harry Renier, the club owner, the team owner, went upstairs. Harry is now with me. And Harry, what did they tell you upstairs at the official scores?
The only explanation I can give you is what they gave me. When I went to ask NASCAR about putting us a lap down, all they could tell me was that we pitted too quick when the caution come out. We're sitting right there in our pits beside the caution car. If we pitted too quick, then we've been a lap down every time we've ever pitted this season then.
But talking to Harry Hyde and your lap charters on their side, they charted every lap and they had Tim in the lead.
That's exactly right. We were on the same lap with the front cars. In fact, we were probably running third at the time. I think the other two cars, the 25 and the 55 car, was in front of us. We were probably third at the time.
Will there be a protest filed at the end of the race?
Well, actually, we're going to have to go back and count after the race is over. But yes, sir, I will find out the truth after the race is over.
Okay, Harry, thanks for stopping by. Jim, that's the story down here on the Tim Richmond situation.
That, of course, was Harry Ranier.
Not Harry Hyde, as we were confused. Harry Hyde is involved with the Tim Richmond car. Harry Ranier with Cale Yarborough's car, which it looks as if suffered exactly the same fate that Tim Richmond did. So here are two men, as it happens, both car owners, both with the same name, both with drivers who have been penalized in a way that they think is unfair. Tough situation.
And there is the leader, Dale Earnhardt, with a lot to drive for today. Second place belongs to Morgan Shepherd. Bill Elliott is third. Harry Gant is fourth. Just to recap, in case you were not with us at the beginning of the day, Dale Earnhardt is the man who was penalized recently by NASCAR for what they viewed as his role in fostering a late lap crash with Darrell Waltrip at Richmond, which helped to decide that race. Earnhardt didn't feel he should have been penalized. NASCAR made quite a public show of penalizing him for that incident, so he has quite an incentive to come back and try to win today. There is the car number 5, Jeff Bodine, winner at the Daytona 500 earlier this year, and there's a look from the race camera, which we have placed inside of Bodine's car, at Harry Gant's car, right on his rear bumper.
Here is a look right out the back of Jeff Bodine's car, and you can see the psychological effect of looking in your rearview mirror, Tim, because these cars run really close and they loom up very big. And you have to assess what kind of competitor you have behind you. Is he a Dale Earnhardt that might give you a tap, an aggressive driver like a Darrell Waltrip? Or is he a gentleman like Harry Gant, for example? Thoughts like that doubtless are going through Jeff Bodine's mind even as we see him driving. In fact, you saw him glance at the rearview mirror. He's very aware of who's behind him. It will affect somewhat the line he takes through the corners. It'll become a little bit more defensive. You drive differently with somebody behind you than you do without.
Some drivers are known to prefer a low line toward the inside of the track. Some, like Richard Petty, are known to take an extremely high line toward the outside more frequently. You watch for that tendency, as Sam Posey pointed out in the rearview mirror. And Sam, we have made a great deal of drafting in all automobile racing. It's worth mentioning again for any of the viewers who are not familiar with stock car racing. These cars are traveling sometimes at speeds very close to 200 miles per hour, and the margin of difference between the two cars is just as small as it appears there, only a few feet.
Yes, and this shot perfectly illustrates the turbulent air that comes off the back of a Grand National stock car. Look at that hood rippling. You see now, if Harry Gant was running in clear air, the hood would not be rippling like that, but such is the turbulence coming off the back of Jeff Bodine's car that you can see it imploding along the top of that hood. A terrific shot, by the way. It shows you how thin the hoods are, and every now and then a team will stay up all night and, oh, here we go for the pass. All right, he's gotten inside of him. That is not what you might think a good example of drafting. That is merely a tactical maneuver of pulling down inside. He's been running in the draft the whole time, but he wasn't able to use his momentum, as you can see, to get by. He merely pulled down inside and was better positioned. Now watch Jeff Bodine as Harry cuts across in front of him. He'll have to do quite a lot of steering because suddenly the balance of the car will be different. The front of Jeff's car will now not attack as well down into the turns. If we can get a look at his arms steering that car, we will see that he's having to turn the wheel more than he did before.
And Sam, we got to look at how dirty Bodine's windshield appeared to be. It certainly did not appear, given this shot, that Bodine has maximum visibility as he goes around the track.
No, he doesn't. Of course, you do sense the racetrack, and I wouldn't be surprised if our camera was exaggerating that effect a little bit. But again, it's another luck factor in racing. You can be going along and just doing everything right and happen to have the bad luck to follow a car whose engine blows and makes your windshield dirty. Of course, it can be fixed at the pit stop.
Continue to press down toward the halfway point of a race, which momentarily appeared to be threatened by rain. Now the dark cloud seems to be moving over, at least for the moment. We keep a look on the clouds as we do on the leader, number 3, Dale Earnhardt. And another score from the NCAA basketball tournament, North Carolina State leading one of the Cinderella teams, Arkansas Little Rock, conqueror of Notre Dame, 37-33 at halftime. many North Carolinians keeping an ear peeled to that game while they watch this particular race, since, of course, college basketball and stock car racing are probably the two most important and culturally attractive sports within the state of North Carolina. And Dale Earnhardt is one of the many North Carolinians who is important within this sport, as is that man, number 47, Morgan Shepherd, who is from Conover, North Carolina, not far from Earnhardt's hometown of Kannapolis.
You speak of the enthusiasm that North Carolinians have for basketball and stock car racing. What are some of the similarities, would you say, between the sport? Look at that. All right, Kyle Petty has crashed into the turn 2 wall. Not a serious impact, but of course it's going to bring out the yellow. Kyle Petty, who won his first race this year after an unbelievable drought of well over 100 races, has crumpled the rear end of his Ford Thunderbird body car. Drives for the Wood brothers.
Certainly had one of the longest waits for his first victory in the history of the sport. And let's take another look now at what happened to Kyle Petty amid a so far largely uneventful race. He is in the middle of the 3 cars that we're looking at right here as they go through that turn.
All right, well, we see him. He pitched the car down quite sharply there, conceivably just too sharply, unless there was a mechanical effect. And because our picture didn't start earlier, you really can't make an accurate judgment. But from where we picked it up, it looked as if he turned it too steeply.
And the yellow has brought a rash of pit stops now. Earnhardt is in. Elliott is in. Various of the other leaders. I can see Benny Parsons is in. Jeff Bodine has come in. Now here comes the number 10 car of Greg Sachs, which has not been among the leaders so far. And perhaps the chief beneficiary of this yellow flag will be Tim Richmond, number 25, of whom we've spoken so much. He was in danger of being lapped by Earnhardt just moments before that crash by Petty. And now, as a result of the yellow, he'll be able to bunch up with the lead pack once again. You saw Harry Gant leaving the pits, as at the moment it is Tim Richmond who has taken over the lead amid all these pit stops. Tim Richmond, who wanted to reassert himself after having lost a lap to what he and his crew must believe to be flawed scoring by NASCAR, in the lead at the moment. Back at Atlanta International Raceway, where at this moment we are in the last lap prior to a green flag. This was going to be a short yellow occasioned by the brush with the wall on the part of Kyle Petty. And during that yellow flag, I believe that every car on the track came in for a pit stop. So now they are lined up in that apparent order. Dale Earnhardt will likely be the leader. And in fact, he will be. You can see him at the front of the pack on the outside in car number 3. It will be Earnhardt on the lead, followed by Harry Gant in car number 33.
Obviously, the cloud has passed enough. Had it not passed, I don't think we would have seen quite so many people pit. I think a couple of cars at least would have gambled on staying out there in hopes of getting the win under rainy conditions. It has cleared up.
Parade of stars at the front, Sam, because after Earnhardt and Gant, it'll be Darrell Waltrip in 3rd place. He has moved up since early in the race when he seemed to be struggling a little bit. Bill Elliott remaining in a steady 4th place. Terry Labonte, car number 44, in 5th place. Richard Petty is 6th. Now here they go once again, as on the outside of the track, Earnhardt will try to reassert his car's advantage and press to the lead, and he does.
It almost is a repetition of the start of the race, with Earnhardt once again ahead, streaking away. But this time, very interesting, the advent of Darrell Waltrip, who we see running on the right of the screen in 3rd place. The first time that we have seen the defending national stock car champion a real part of this race. Waltrip was back in 14th at one point early in the game with no speed at all. Suddenly he has found the speed. Obviously they have been working that Junior Johnson crew every time they have come into the pits to try to improve the car, and all of a sudden Waltrip has found the speed. You see him with Bill Elliott right behind him, and we're looking at 2nd, 3rd, and 4th as Waltrip, going into turn 3, tries to move up into 2nd, tries to get inside of Harry Gant, who you see in the green car number 33.
It's interesting, Sam, to look at this sport from the long view of history. I think you can discern 3 distinct generations of drivers who have been dominant in the sport of stock car racing. The first generation, the pioneers, the Junior Johnsons and Lee Pettys and Buck Bakers and Fireball Roberts of the world. The second generation, the entrepreneurs who expanded opportunities for drivers, Richard Petty, David Pearson, Buddy Baker, Bobby Allison, Cale Yarborough. Now you have the young corporate stars like Elliott and Earnhardt and Labonte and Bodine and Neil Bonnet. And Darrell Waltrip doesn't really fit into any of the 3 categories. He's somewhere in between the entrepreneurs, Petty and Pearson and those guys, and the new corporate stars of the sport. But Darrell Waltrip has earned more money racing stock cars than any other driver, Richard Petty included. That is his distinction, and it's one I'm sure that he is quite comfortable with.
Yes, but he just dropped to place, didn't he, to Bill Elliott, one of your corporate men. I'm fascinated by that analysis, and I think it is very, very accurate. We now see Bill Elliott in 3rd, right behind Harry Gant, and this high line that Darrell Waltrip is running is not paying off for him at all, and it makes me wonder why he has stuck with it through these laps. We saw him running well in 3rd. He's now back to 5th. And it is seemingly because he's positioned his car badly on the road. Now, that obviously is not a driving error. It's a tactical thing that's going on, relates to how his car is handling, but it's still interesting to see it. Maybe he does not have the resurgent speed that I thought he had when we started talking about him 3 laps ago.
Meanwhile, you have watched Bill Elliott taking a significantly lower line on the racetrack and seeming to make headway with it.
You can see Dale Earnhardt ahead of them. He has not pulled decisively away. It's interesting, too, as you spoke of the different generations of NASCAR, man, how many of these drivers are relatively old? I mean, for example, how about Harry Gant at 46? How about Parsons at 44? Yarborough at 45? Petty, Richard Petty at 48.
Well, my favorite line of the day is you said that A.J. Foyt is starting to get more serious about stock car racing. At age 51, is that any time to get more serious about any form of automobile racing? I know that A.J. is an extraordinary guy.
Well, A.J. has always said that if his eyesight began to go, he would retire from racing. And last year at Indianapolis, where eyesight is a very critical factor, he was worried about it a little bit. Some interviews that we had with him suggested that was on his mind. It is not nearly so critical in this form of the sport. As you can see, in fact, from the windshield of Jeff Bodine, you can't see where you're going half the time anyway. And he may be going to emphasize stock car racing now in his program at the expense of Indianapolis car racing.
You look at Bill Elliott in car number 9 as he attempts to draw a bead on Dale Earnhardt. There are mixed opinions on the question of whether or not there is pressure on Elliott in this race. He has not been extremely competitive in the first 3 races of this year. And some would say, well, that's okay. There are plenty more races to go in the season. But Bill Elliott created such extraordinary expectations for that car and for his racing a year ago early in the season when, in some instances, he was winning pole positions with qualifying speeds more than 1 mile per hour faster than all the other drivers, that you have to look at him and wonder, is he going to be satisfied with simply being competitive, or is Elliott going to try to push, particularly here at what he regards as his home track, to get back out on top and make a statement for himself as he chases Dale Earnhardt? Let's go down to Tim Brandt in the pits.
Okay, Jim Lampley, I'm in the pit area of Richard Petty. I'm with his chief, Dale Inman. Now, Dale, when he came in last time for that pit stop, you were visibly upset. He didn't get out quickly. What happened?
Well, he stalled the engine, but he was wanting his windshield clean. We didn't get it very clean, and he stalled the engine, but the car's not working real good right now. We got to do something about that.
What are the problems? What does Richard tell you the problem is?
Well, we've been loose about all day, and we're trying to get that tightened up, but this set of tires not working as good as the last set, so we got to hope we can get a caution and get that straightened out.
Okay, thank you, Dale. There again, of course, Jim, is what we were talking about, the circumference of this tires. They continually try to find the right set of tires for these automobiles. He said it's loose. That means it's moving around. The push condition that the General Motors cars really have is what usually makes them go straight and tries to make them go straight. But he says right now he's got a bad loose condition down here with Richard Petty.
All right, Tim, and the man you were just talking to, Dale Inman, is the cousin of Richard Petty, who is now running in 7th place, back with Richard after a 5-year absence, as Richard is really trying at this point in his career, Sam, to put together the kind of continuity, the kind of togetherness that he had in the racing team, which was such a factor in the sport in the middle to late 70s.
To recapture the old magic in effect. Now, the gap between Earnhardt in the lead and Elliott in second has been shrinking. And earlier, Jim, you were talking about the pressure on Bill Elliott. I'll tell you, there's enormous pressure on Bill Elliott. If there's nobody in the world is bringing pressure on him except himself. He is so oriented toward goals and toward success that he puts ungodly pressure on himself. So you know he means to win this race. It's very important. Here's a race he won twice last year. Invincible here, and I think if he was shut down badly, I don't mean if he got a second or third or something, that would be excellent, but if he was humiliated here, I think it could upset the psychological balance of the team. However, he's having an excellent showing, his best of the year so far, and he's got to be greatly encouraged.
All right, now let's go down to our other pit reporter, Al Trautwig, with the Kyle Petty operation.
All right, Jim, here is why we had the yellow flag just a few minutes ago. The hole in the tire of Kyle Petty, and the tire is so hot right now I can barely touch it. You can see if we come up to the car that there is a tremendous amount of damage on the rear end of the car. Now, Kyle Petty is still in the car. Kyle, are you okay? Kyle? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm all right.
What happened?
I cut a left rear tire. About the time I crossed the start-finish line, I cut a rear tire. I think it's the left rear, but the car just bobbed and weaved a little bit. When I went down the corner, the car never took a step. It spun around on me, and I got in the wall. I thought I could keep it out of the wall, but I didn't.
Okay, Kyle Petty with some lonely moments. Interesting, Jim, he benefited from a crash just a few days ago, and now he's the victim of one. Back to you.
That's right, Al Trautwig. Kyle was in 5th place on that last lap in Richmond when a crash propelled him into 1st place in his first win. Let's take another look at what happened here in turn 2.
Well, now, with this additional information, it's obvious that that spin started because one of the rear tires had gone on him. It's nice to think that it wasn't a driving error by a man I regard as one of the really promising men on the scene. And as many times as you may have heard the name Kyle Petty, remember, he is only 25, so he's been around a long time, but we hope he has an enormous future.
He is the son, of course, of Richard Petty, and this is a sport in which family operations are quite numerous. You were talking about the pressure that Bill Elliott places upon himself. His chief mechanic, the man most responsible for setting up the car, is his brother, Ernie Elliott. Do you think it's more difficult to argue with your brother about the setup of a car when you come in off the track than it might be to argue for just a hired hand?
Well, you see, I think that's part of what the Elliott magic was last year. Everybody wondered, well, is it the Ford Thunderbird aerodynamics? Is it something secret they're doing that nobody else knows anything about? But it may very well have been that unspoken cooperation and love between brothers. I mean, it has been a team effort. They've all shared in the successes equally, and I think that unique bond helped them considerably. But as anybody who's ever been in a situation like that well knows, success can sometimes, ironically, spoil the brew, you know what I mean. And I don't think that's happened here, and I certainly hope it hasn't. But where egos are at stake and as much money and fame and prestige is at stake as is in NASCAR racing, anything can happen.
Right now, Bill Elliott is either satisfied to run in 2nd place or is being relegated to it by a superior Dale Earnhardt car. The two cars running relatively free of traffic at the head of the pack right now. But if, in fact, they do begin to lap trailing cars, Dale Earnhardt is one driver who knows how to use trailing traffic to his advantage and likes to do it, as he told us earlier.
Well, you're always thinking that later in the stages of the race. If it's a close race, you're racing somebody close and you see some traffic up ahead and you know it's going to come down to the last lap or the next to the last lap, you try to use it if you can in a safe way, or, you know, a manner that's not going to get them in trouble or you either one. But traffic does play a big part in races, and, you know, hopefully you come down and racing clean and not worry about traffic. But when traffic's there, you've got to race, you know, judge for it and calculate for it, and if it can help you or it can hurt you a lot of times, hopefully it'll help you and you can win the race by it. But I like to go out and beat a guy and win the race just outright.
Right now, he appears capable of doing that if things hold up. We are very close to the halfway point of this race. Not as significant a factor as it might have been 20 minutes ago when it appeared that rain was impending here. Now the rain cloud has blown on to the north and to the east, and it does not appear for the moment as though rain is a threat anymore. So for Dale Earnhardt, just 250 some odd miles yet to go in a race in which he has so far led most of the way, the Atlanta 500.
Moves outside of Trevor Boys there. You know, an interesting thing about Dale Earnhardt is that he drives with very, very thin-soled shoes so that he has a better feel, he tells me, for the throttle opening and closing. Now, these cars are very, very hot down around the pedal area. Dale Earnhardt, as I said once and will say, I hope many more times, is a tough cookie. And he'd rather have that feel of the throttle and not worry so much about his hot feet. Anyway, his hobby in between racing is going fishing, and I guess he has plenty of time to put his feet in a cool stream while he fishes for some trout.
Earnhardt's car is owned by Richard Childress, himself a former driver and one of the great veterans of this sport, both on and off the track. They look good right now, leading on lap 156 with still a long way to go. Live in Atlanta, where the standings remain as they were before we went to commercial. Earnhardt, Elliott, Harry Gant, Morgan Shepherd, Darrell Waldrop, Terry Labonte, and Tim Richmond, the leaders in the Atlanta 500. Incidentally, next Saturday on ABC Sports, first the Professional Bowlers Tour live at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, a bonus event with a $150,000 jackpot. Two bowlers can clinch $50,000 bonuses if either of them wins next week. Plus, at immediately following 4:30 Eastern Time, ABC's Wide World of Sports, the WBA Cruiserweight Championship, Dwight Muhammad Kwawi, whom you may remember from his past as Dwight Braxton, against once heavyweight champion of the world, Leon Spinks, now fighting for the WBA Cruiserweight Championship. Another halftime score from the NCAA basketball tournament. There's the other Cinderella joining University of Arkansas Little Rock in that category, Cleveland State, the team which upended Indiana, tied with St. Joseph's 26 apiece at halftime in the NCAA regions. Meanwhile, Dale Earnhardt continues on the lead. Bill Elliott, number 9, in second place. A year ago, Elliott won this race easily amid a streak of victories which made him the hottest driver on the stock car racing circuit in years. At that time, Elliott and his Ford were so clearly dominant that the other teams were scrambling to catch up. But now, 4 of the top 5 cars in the standings at this moment are General Motors cars. Only Bill Elliott's Ford among the contenders in a Ford chassis. And that has a great deal to do with the continuing engineering and design confrontation between General Motors and Ford, which has been the substance of so much discussion on the stock car racing circuit since the middle of last year.
Elliott is closing in a little bit, and I've been watching this with some care, and I think the explanation may be that his car is what they call in NASCAR terms loose. The tail end is sliding out a little bit more. That is an advantageous condition for the handling of a car on this particular track where the turns are so long. The car is, this of course is the kind of traffic that the leaders encounter, and here it isn't helping Earnhardt a bit. In fact, in that exchange, we see Bill Elliott able to move for the first time right to the rear bumper of Dale Earnhardt. Now, I think Earnhardt is suffering from what you call a pushing condition. In other words, the tail end of his car is not loose. It's not helping him around the track at all. And incidentally, we've passed the halfway point in the race now. We've got an official race.
Right on it, Sam. And when they complete this next lap, they will have completed the halfway point of the race.
Okay, excellent. So we're seeing 2 cars that handled a little bit differently, and it's a good matchup. And, okay, there it goes. It is halfway now. And let's go down to the pits where Timmy Brandt has a story.
Okay, I'm down here in the Darrell Waltrip area with Junior Johnson, the chief. And Darrell's car looks like it's running a little bit high. Why is that, Junior?
Well, it's real loose right now, and he's having to chase the back end up the hill. We'll keep, changing the tire stagger and adjusting on it. We'll get it here before the day's over.
How far away are you? Is it getting better and better every time?
About 2 more adjustments, we should hit it. If we don't over-adjust it, we should be okay.
Still confident, though, no.
Well, what happens, we've already been on both sides of the adjustment. We've had the car pushing, we got it loose right now. So when we go back, we'll stop, where we think it should be.
Okay, Sam Posey, you mentioned he was a little bit high, wasn't much Darrell could do, but there's the reason. It's running a little bit loose right now.
Yeah, but Tim, when Junior Johnson says they've been on both sides of the adjustment, that's like the gunnery officer on a battleship saying that he's been on both sides and he's got you bracketed. I would say what we have just heard, thanks to your interview, that means bad news for everybody else, because when Darrell and Junior get things wired up, they go very, very fast around racetracks.
Right now, Waltrip is in 5th place. And you heard from Junior Johnson, once dubbed the last American hero and certainly one of the great folk heroes of stock car racing, as he continues to try to dial it in. We're deeper and deeper into the lexicon of the sport now, Sam. We have heard pushing, we have heard pulling, we've heard loose. Loose goes with pulling, pushing is tight. And here at Atlanta, it is regarded as an advantage to be set up a little bit on the loose side. You were getting into that just moments ago.
Well, exactly. But it's as simple as this. If you are going as hard as you can in a turn, and the car is wanting to slide, either the nose is going to slide first or the tail is going to slide first. It's as simple as that. Or, conceivably, under nearly perfect condition, the entire car would just work its way up the banking in a perfectly balanced drift. But it's called pushing if the nose goes up toward the wall. It's called a loose condition if the tail goes up the wall. And, of course, it was a loose, oversteering condition that was being described by Junior Johnson.
A sport of minutely calibrated adjustments, of sophisticated guesswork, moment by moment. For more of it, let's go down to Al Trautwig in the pits.
Jim, I just came from Dale Earnhardt's pit, where the pit crew there said that he was handling only normally in this kind of heat. Ernie, how is Bill's car holding up?
Well, everything seems to be okay right now. You know, you're just halfway through the race. So, you know, I think basically everybody's just trying to feel things out right now for the end of the race. You know, I'm sure Earnhardt's not running as hard as he can run. You know, if he's not, he's going to be tough at the end of the race.
So you're saving something for the end?
Well, I'm sure Earnhardt is.
Okay, that's Ernie Elliott, the pit crew chief of Bill Elliott's number 9, battling right now with Dale Earnhardt. Jim?
He's suspicious that Dale Earnhardt is saving something for the end. A year ago, all the other drivers were trying to figure out precisely what it was that Bill Elliott was saving when he was saving it. We mentioned the sophisticated guesswork. Much of the guesswork in last year's stock car racing scene was devoted to the question of what Elliott had that the other drivers didn't have. A few days ago, Bill Elliott revealed to us a little bit about that guesswork and the secrets which made him so successful.
You know, that happens in this racing more than anybody realizes. And the thing of it is, it's hard to keep any kind of secrets in this business. If you go out and you've got a particular product that works good on your car, and you try to keep it, you know, under wraps from everybody else, you can't do it. There's too many people that let's say if the company wants that product to be known, they're going to tell everybody else that you got the product, whether you got it or not. But, you know, that's the way this series usually goes.
That is a North Georgia accent as opposed to the South Georgia accent made popular across the country by President Jimmy Carter when he was in the White House. You can't do it, Sam.
Let me add a thing or two about secrecy, because it is a very big issue in NASCAR. If you travel to any of the team shops, you'll find the doors are locked. Security is very high. All right, that's fine. That's where you build the car and you do your engine work. When you come to the track, you've got to work on your car in a common garage with no walls between the bays. You are working literally cheek by jowl with the guys in the next team. So how do you maintain your secrecy then? And it's amazing some of the lengths that they'll go to. For example, they might, if they want to do something, trick to the rear suspension, change the spring, or in some way change the shock absorber, they might create a diversion up at the front of the car, apparently dropping something or making an apparent adjustment to the front suspension, while one man, carefully choreographed, goes back there and makes the key change. So secrecy is a very big thing, and it takes another form, too, which is one of the reasons the cost of NASCAR racing has escalated so much. It takes the form of hiring key men away from other teams. A crew chief does well. He may very well have to be concerned that his second in command will be hired away to head up another team. So he may be reluctant to tell his second in command everything he really knows. And that's one reason the Elliots, of course, have been able to keep such a cloak of secrecy around their team, because it's a family operation and nobody's leaving it.
For the moment, lurking back in 13th place, and certainly not by choice, but of unfortunate necessity, is number 28, Cale Yarborough. And here is a look inside Cale's car with our race cam.
Cale Yarborough going through turn 2. You see how steeply banked the curves are. That's Terry Labonte in the blue car right in front of him. Labonte, the winner of the last race just a couple of weeks ago. You see the instruments in front of Cale that are giving him the vital signs of the car. He drives with power steering, incidentally. There's a look out the front. You can see some shadows starting across the track. Now it looks as if Cale is well positioned to move inside of Labonte. Notice the tachometer there. That's his indication of how well he's going on the straight. They do not have a speedometer. Speed, after all, is important only in its relative sense here. To the right of that tachometer is his oil pressure gauge. To the right of that, his oil temperature gauge. I can't see from here what they are reading, but I do see his fuel pressure gauge, which is reading, in effect, full. It measures the pressure left in the tank. It's only when the needle starts to fluctuate that he knows he's in trouble. He's got the water temperature gauge over to the left of the tank. How often does he look at this stuff? You can see it right there. He doesn't look at it really all that often except under a yellow. Now, as we look over here, do you see the 3 red marks just under and to the left of where it says Cale? Those are spare sticks of chewing gum that he carries. But he won't reach for them now, of course, again, only under a yellow.
Well, those are more important on a hotter day than this. For the moment, the temperature is still hovering right at around 70 degrees, which is remarkably comfortable weather compared to what the riders are used to on the NASCAR circuit.
That may be, but he started with 5 sticks and is down to 3. You see, he's pacing himself through this 500-mile race.
I can't resist them either. This is the 4th race on the stock car racing circuit in 1986. Cale Yarborough does not yet have a top 5 finish this year. He and his crew are hoping to get that Ford into better working condition as the circuit goes on. The Daytona 500 was won by Jeff Bodine. That man, number 3, Dale Earnhardt, ran out of gas when he was apparently in position in the closing laps to try to slingshot by Bodine. Then a 400-mile race in Richmond won by Kyle Petty when Earnhardt was alleged to have parked Darrell Waltrip, as they call it in this sport, in the closing laps of the race. And then 2 weeks ago, a race in Rockingham, North Carolina, over 500 miles, won by Terry Labonte, who won the pole and the race, first to do it in 1986. One man who's been lurking near victory in all 3 of those races, Darrell Waltrip, was 3rd at Daytona, 5th at Richmond, and was 5th again at Rockingham, and may be in a position to break through today. Earlier you heard Junior Johnson say that they were just about getting that car toward the kind of adjustment they wanted to run on this Atlanta track. But for now, it is Dale Earnhardt still in the lead as we are now well past the halfway point in this 500-mile race.
The chassis adjustments, you see the gap there between the leader. Elliott, who was able to close up earlier on Earnhardt, has not been able to stay with him. He's dropped back slowly. And one of the things that has been hampering slightly the chassis adjustment as the race has gone on is that a rules change has permitted the rear quarter panel windows, and you see it just behind where the yellow stripe stops on Earnhardt's car. There's a small window there. They're now allowed to fill those windows with plexiglass, which you didn't used to be allowed to do. It improves the aerodynamics fractionally, but it means that when the man wants to adjust the rear suspension and he dives into the back of the car with a wrench, it's much harder for him to make that adjustment than it used to be.
Just been told that car number 81, driven by Chet Phillip, has blown an engine. And right now, we are going to go down for another report from the pits.
Jim Lampley, I am standing in the pit area of car number 47, being Morgan Shepherd. He's running one whale of a race today. The interesting story here is that Morgan Shepherd's car is unsponsored, and in this sport which relies so heavily on sponsors, it is very, very unusual. Unlike Richard Petty's crew over here that all has uniforms with all kinds of people standing around, is some seemingly doing not much. Here in this area of Morgan Shepherd, there is not a large crowd. There are no uniforms, but this has probably perhaps one of the best crew chiefs around, that being Jack Elder, and he is known throughout the NASCAR circuit as being a tremendous pit chief. They also have an owner named Jake Beebe, and his job is he owns a chain of school buses up in Connecticut. But unsponsored nonetheless, they're running extremely well right now in the 3rd spot. It is quiet here in the pits. They just have not had many problems. Jimmy?
All right, thank you, Tim. He referred to the man who cruised that car, Jake Elder, also known within the sport as Suitcase, because he has worked for various different top teams in his long and storied career. Morgan Shepherd still trying to stay in the hunt. And he is doing so for now. But the leader remains Dale Earnhardt ahead of Bill Elliott after lap 183 of the Atlanta 500. He returned to Atlanta very close to the 300-mile mark, I should say, in this 500-mile race. The leader remains Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt, the flagship car for the General Motors effort to compete with Bill Elliott's Ford. And there is car number 17, which has a problem. Doug Heverson going to the inside of the track. Doug Heveron, I should say. Switching to the inside of the track there, and smoke emerging from the engine.
Blew the engine, no question about it. When smoke comes out from underneath the cowl like that, you know that it's the engine that's gone. Of course, it'll bring out the yellow flag, which will have some more statistical and strategic implications.
In the parlance of the sport, as the good old boys are sometimes wont to say, he blowed the engine there. That's right. Now, we talked before the race about the confrontation between General Motors, currently on the lead in the form of Dale Earnhardt Chevrolet, and the Ford with Bill Elliott behind the wheel. How is that confrontation shaping up to now?
It couldn't be working out better, could it, really, for those people who write the rules and try to establish parity between the different types of cars, or for the people that promote this kind of race, because there are legions of fans for the Ford of Bill Elliott, and there are legions of fans for the Chevrolet of Dale Earnhardt. And as we see them going back and forth and their fortunes changing, ebbing and flowing down here, we can see the reaction from the crowd. Dale Earnhardt, of course, representing the General Motors, the Chevrolet body car. We see him in the pits here with one of the best pit crews in the business, the Richard Childress pit crew. We see them changing the outside tires and refueling. I look for it to be about 15 seconds. And now they're starting to be, no, they're going to do the inside tires as well. So because of the yellow, they've got plenty of time, and they would probably now know that they won't have to change the inside tires again before the end of the race. So
there had been, for 2 races, a rule limiting tire changes to only 2 tires at a time. But for this race, they are being allowed to change all 4 at the same time, and now Bill Elliott goes out of the pits right behind Dale Earnhardt. So the leaders are going back out onto the track during the yellow flag.
Yeah, they rescinded that tire rule, and as we saw Bill Elliott's pit stop at the latter stages there, it's obvious that he did exactly the same thing that Dale Earnhardt did. So our 2 heavyweight contenders, to put it in a kind of fighting mode, have both done exactly the same things during their pit stop.
You spoke about the Ford versus General Motors confrontation. In the context of this track, it is worth pointing out, as we look at Morgan Shepherd in a General Motors car, that drivers have said this is a track where Fords have done particularly well in the past. Is there enough continuity in the design and the aerodynamics and the operation of the cars over the long course of years that it's in any way valid to say that one course favors Fords over Chevrolets, so to speak?
It's a great question, and I'm not sure there is a correct answer, but let's take the supposition that, yes, there is enough continuity to establish that theory. Why, then, has the Ford been more successful here? A couple of reasons. First, the Ford engine has a broader power range than the Chevrolet, or has historically had a broader power range. And this track, with its long turns and fairly high speed differentials between the fastest that you go and the slowest that you go, allows that broad base power of the Ford to pull it out of the slow part of the turn and out onto the straight. So the engine is one reason. The other reason is that this track traditionally has changed in character a lot during the race, become oilier, greasier, and so on. And it seems that there's something about the Thunderbird, especially, that adapts to changing track conditions a little bit better than the Chevrolet.
All right, if you're a casual fan of the sport, as you watch these cars under the yellow flag, one man whose face may be relatively new to you, 44-year-old Morgan Shepherd of Conover, North Carolina. I am told that he has a fascinating pet, and I'm going to learn about it with you now as Morgan tells us about his pet.
Yeah, her name's Bobby, and she's a raccoon, and she's just a sweetheart. We've raised a couple of them, and Bobby's so much better than the other raccoon, which was Bandit. She's just real good-natured, and we have a lot of fun out of her. We sit at home, and we get our animals, our dogs and cats, and the raccoon out and let them all play, and, you know, it's better than watching TV, except for when it's racing.
That, incidentally, was a particular kind of Piedmont, North Carolina accent. And you may say to me, Sam, as a New Englander, that you don't think there was a lot of difference between that and what you heard out of the mouth of Bill Elliott, but any Southerner can tell you that there is.
I would not challenge you on these grounds at all.
Dale Earnhardt is the leader on lap 191 of 328 laps in the Atlanta 500. Bill Elliott in second place. Nothing could be more poetic at this stage of development in stock car racing than for the race to narrow down to a battle between those two, but there's certainly still a long way to go, and Morgan Shepherd could contend. So could Terry Labonte, who is looking for his second straight win. And so, of course, could the King, Richard Petty, winless since July of '84. Continue under the yellow flag occasioned by the blown engine of Heveron here at Atlanta. Earnhardt, Elliott, Shepherd, and Waltrip are the leaders as they stay in position right now under the yellow. Those of you who are joining us late, another look at NCAA basketball tournament scores. Alabama shading Illinois, so the Crimson Tide will move on. Navy with the upset of the day, knocking off Syracuse in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. What a shock that must have been to the Orange fans. David Robinson, the brilliant Navy center, 35 points, 9 rebounds, 8 blocked shots. You want to keep your eye on one player who could emerge and make a real splash unexpectedly in the tournament. He just may be the one to watch. Some people regard him as the very best collegiate center in the country, even better than Dougherty of North Carolina and Tarpley of Michigan, who have gotten most of the attention during the course of the year, along, of course, with Bedford of Memphis State, who is no longer in the tournament after yesterday's loss to LSU. And now, let's return to what's happening here on the track in Atlanta and go down to Al Trautwig in the pits.
Jim, what is developing here is a situation where the winner today may be the gambler. We have just passed the 191st complete lap. Now, on the average, the cars are going 60 laps on a full tank of gas. So 2 more full tanks will bring us to lap number 311. You need 328 to win the Atlanta 500. So that means you're either going to have to gamble or you're going to need plenty of laps under yellow in which to save gas. So what comes out of here today is all important. And the team that decides to perhaps go for it late in the race may just have enough fumes to carry them across the line. Back to you.
That will be something which we will continue to watch. Remember, of course, in case you've joined us late, the man who is leading, Dale Earnhardt, appeared to be in position 1 month ago today to win the Daytona 500 at Daytona Beach and ran out of gas in the closing laps when he was in second place and in a position apparently to try to slingshot by the leader, Jeff Bodine. That is Earnhardt's car on the outside of the formation next to the wall there, car number 3. He continues as the leader in this race.
What you do in the pits when you come in for fuel, what you do to the car in terms of the setup is an outgrowth in some ways of the philosophy of your crew chief, whether he's a gambling man, a guy that likes to play it safe. Certainly when Earnhardt ran out of gas, they were gambling, no question about it, and that is the kind of attitude that they have.
And incidentally, during that long yellow flag, Harry Gant, whom you have seen leading the race on a couple of occasions, was in the pits having a rear axle problem worked on, and Gant is now at least 2 laps down as he moves back out onto the course. So it will be very difficult for Gant to appear among the leaders again. He just may have run afoul of a rear axle problem. They are under the green now, and Earnhardt is still in the lead.
Although it is Benny Parsons in the black car that we would see if we pan slightly to the left. It is Benny Parsons who's trying to unlap himself and is showing tremendous speed as this green came out. He got quite a jump on Dale Earnhardt. Once again, Bill Elliott has taken up station right behind Dale Earnhardt. So the 2 leaders must ignore Gant to the left. He is
Parsons, you mean?
Parsons, I'm sorry, almost a lap back.
Just to clarify, if Earnhardt goes by Parsons, he is then exactly 1 lap behind. For the moment, Parsons is avoiding that fate. Earnhardt is allowing Bill Elliott to suck right up to the back bumper again. And now Elliott is moving to the inside and trying to go by. Bill Elliott is trying to take the lead on lap 198 with still 130 laps to go, and he didn't get by. I'm not sure he really wanted it.
well, he came from quite far back. I'd say that he can count that last lap to be a great success. He, remember, we've just seen a rash of pit stops. So the cars, although they look the same from the outside, have been altered mechanically in subtle ways. Different tires are on both those lead cars. Possibly suspension changes have been made as well. So we are not seeing quite the same balance in those two cars, and it would look right off the bat here, wouldn't you agree, that the Elliott car has picked up a little more aggressiveness?
Certainly does look better than prior to that last pit stop. And now we are timing a Dale Earnhardt lap. The average speed for the race, because of the two long yellows, has now been dropped down below 140 miles per hour, which was Elliott's average in winning the race 1 year ago. We will time this lap and try to gauge an average speed off of what we see for the number 3 car. Dale Earnhardt, which passes by the flag at 33.7 seconds. Let's call that 163 miles per hour.